Okay, so I'm gonna be making a pair of granny square shorts, and they're pretty easy to make. You're just gonna need 3 pieces, the 2 panels, and then the waistband. I'm gonna be using Made with Love by Tom Daly, and that's a size medium 4-weight yarn. So if you wanted to use any other type of yarn, feel free to. This is a mix of cotton and acrylic, which is really nice for the summer. It's super breathable. And I'm gonna be using a size 5mm hook. You're also going to need a darning needle in order to weave in your ends, some measuring tape, and then any type of scissors you have to cut the yarn. In order to get started, you are gonna take whichever color you wanna use first. I'm gonna use my red color, and we're gonna start off by making a granny square. So to do that, you're gonna make a slip knot. And if you don't know how to make a slip knot, I like to make an L shape with the yarn. So have the side that isn't connected to the yarn facing to your left side. And then you're gonna take the working side of the yarn and you're gonna flip it over on itself so that it makes a nice L shape. And then you're gonna put your 2 fingers inside the loop and you're gonna grab the working end of the yarn with those 2 fingers. And then you're gonna grab the end of the yarn that isn't on the working side and you're gonna pull that. And that will make your slip knot. And then you're gonna go ahead and put that onto your hook and tighten it a bit so that it's secured. And we're gonna start off with a chain 4. So go ahead and yarn over. 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we're gonna go into the first stitch that we made and we're gonna make a slip stitch. So go back into that first loop here, yarn over, and we're gonna go through both of these loops that are still left on the hook. That's 1 loop, that's 2 loops. And now you're gonna see that in the middle here, we have a little circle that we made and we're gonna be working back into that. So before we do that, we're gonna chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. And then we're going to make a double crochet back into the circle here. So to do that, you're gonna yarn over and then you're gonna go back into the circle here. Make sure you're going into the circle and not any of these initial stitches that we made, otherwise it won't look as clean. And you're gonna yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, yarn over, and pull through the last 2 loops. And now we're gonna do 1 more of those into that same loop by yarning over, going into that circle, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2. And now that completes 1 section of our granny square. And now in order to do the next part, we're gonna have to chain 3, 2, 3, and you're gonna chain 3 whenever you're at a corner. And that essentially makes it a turning point so that you could get to the next side. So now we're gonna go back into the circle here by yarning over and making a double crochet. Now each section that we do is gonna have a total of 3 double crochets. So we're gonna make 2 more into the circle. Now 1 more. And that is a total of 3. So now we're gonna do a total of 2 more so that we have 4 of these clusters. And we're gonna do the next one by chaining 3, 2, 3. Now we're gonna yarn over and go back into that circle and make 3 double crochets. That's 1. That's 2. And that is 3. Now we have one more, so you're going to chain 3 because we're at the corner. Now we're going to make 3 more double crochets into the middle section here. One, two, and 3. Okay, and now to close the square here, since we're at a corner, we're going to chain 3 again. Three. And now we are going to slip stitch into the 3rd chain here. We chained 3 at the beginning of the circle, and that's where we ended up. And that basically acts as the first double crochet. So you're going to find the 1, 2, 3rd chain here. You're going to go into it. Okay, so now once you insert it into that 3rd chain, you're going to go ahead and grab your new color. Okay, so you're going to grab your new color and you're basically going to finish off this slip stitch with the new color, and that's how you're going to change your yarn. So finish that slip stitch with the new color. Make sure that it is a little tight, that red yarn that you just left off. That way it doesn't fall off. And now when you finish off with the blue yarn, make sure to chain 4. And this is going to be the start of the new row. So whenever you're at the beginning of a new row, you are either going to have 3 double crochets on top of you, or you're going to land on a chain space in the middle. And if you land on a chain space, then you begin the row with a chain 3. But when you land on it where there's 3 double crochets right below you, you chain 4. And you're going to make 3 double crochets like you normally would. That is 1, 2, and 3. Now, since we're at a corner here, we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And then we're going to go back into this same corner and we're going to make 3 more double crochets. So yarn over, go back into that same circle and make 3 double crochets. That's 1. That's 2. And this is 3. Now, whenever you're not in a corner space, what we're going to do is chain 1. And that is to get to the other side of the chain space. And now, since we're going into the corner, we're just going to insert 3 double crochets like we normally would. And since we're at a corner, now we're going to chain 3. And yarn over and place 3 more double crochets into that same chain space there. Okay, so that is 3. Now we are going to chain 1 since we're not working in a corner space, and then place 3 double crochets into this space here. Okay, I'm at a corner, so chain 3, 3, and then make 3 more double crochets into that same space. Okay, and now we're going to chain 1, and continue making 3 double crochets into this last space here. Okay, and now we're going to chain 3. Once we get to this point, what we're going to do is we're going to chain 3 like we normally would, since we're going to go back into this corner space. But instead of making 3 double crochets, we're only going to make 2, and then we're going to slip stitch it to this chain 4 that we made in the beginning, but we're only going to count 3 chains. That way that it counts as a double crochet, and that extra chain acts as a... Okay, so now you're going to go into that 3rd chain space. So count 1, 2, 3. You're going to go in, and now we're going to have to change back to the red color. So before we finish it off, we are going to grab... So before we finish it off, we are going to grab our red yarn, and we're going to finish the stitch with the red yarn by yarning over and pulling through both of those loops. Now, instead of chaining 4 to begin this new round like we did last time, we're actually going to chain 3. And it's only going to change every other row. So it's either going to be chain 3 or chain 4 at the beginning of the row. And the way to know is if you end up in a chain space, you're only going to begin by chaining 3. And if you end up on top of a double crochet cluster like we did last round, you are going to end up chaining 4. And that's because we need an extra chain space like you saw to connect the last cluster to the beginning cluster. Whereas when we do the double crochet into the chain space, when we get to the end of the row, all we have to do is chain 1 to connect them rather than slip stitch into that slip stitch into those 3 chains like we did last time. Now to do this row, we're going to yarn over and double crochet 2 more double crochets for a total of 3. That's 1, and that is 2. Chain 1, and then make 3 double crochets into this chain space. Chain 3, and continue to do what you've been doing until you get to the end point, which is right here. And I will show you what to do, but you're essentially just going to chain 1 after you make your last 3 double crochets into this chain space. I did my last 3 double crochets here. And to connect this side, we are going to chain 1 and then slip stitch into the 3rd chain. So 1, 2, 3. Oops. Okay. And once again, we're going to switch colors. So instead of finishing off with the red, I'm going to finish off with the blue. And since we are on a row with the double crochet cluster, we're going to chain 4. Okay, so when we get up to this point, we're going to continue working in rounds up until our desired length and width. So I'm going to work until about 19 to 20 inches, and that should be for a size small to medium, and that should fit around one of your thighs. So if you just take the measurement around your thighs, you should know that that's how much you have to work. So just adjust accordingly and it should work out in the end. So continue working up until that point, and we're gonna make 2 total of these. Okay, so once you have your 2 squares, you're gonna fold them in half, wrong sides together. I'm gonna be slip stitch seaming with single crochet. So in order to mark where the crotch area is, I've already measured, and you're going to count 7 clusters up from the bottom, and you're going to stitch mark that on this side and on the other. You're going to stitch mark it on this side and on the other side. and that's for both this panel and the second panel. Okay, so once you stitch mark where the crotch area is, you can go ahead and take your 4mm hook and I'm using the Lion brand cotton yarn for this to match the edging here. And you can actually take out one of the stitch markers on the other side. So I'm just going to take out this one and place my hook there. Okay, I'm actually on the wrong side, so I'm going to flip it. And I'm actually going to switch the stitch marker for 1 second. Okay, so now you're going to insert your hook where both of those stitch markers were. And we're basically going to seam it together with single crochets in every stitch across. I'm going to come back and sew these two together for the sides of the legs. Yarn over, and pass through all the loops on the hook. And then you're going to chain 1 and go back into that stitch and make a single crochet. Now you're going to continue doing this in each corresponding stitch, making a single crochet in each one down until you get to the bottom here, and that's where the waist is going to be. So you could cut your yarn and fasten off once you get there. Okay, once you sew along both sides up until the waist part, you should start to see the shorts forming here. And if you flip it over, it's going to be the same exact thing. And now all we have to do is sew the leg pieces together. And this is easy because we already have our starting point from where our seam started on the crotch area. So now you're just going to line those up perfectly. And you're going to do the same exact thing you did to sew up the crotch area, but between the two legs. So you're going to single crochet between every single corresponding stitch on this side, and then again on this side. I would recommend just starting from one of the corners and just working all the way around. That way you don't have to like cut your yarn if you start in the middle and then go again that way. So start with the right hand side, that way you could work from the right to the left all the way around. And once you do that, you could cut your yarn and fasten off, and then I will show you how to do the waistband. Make a slip knot, put it onto the hook, make sure to tighten, and then we are going to yarn over with our working yarn and pull through that slip knot and pull through the cluster stitch on the waistband. And now to secure, we're going to chain 1, and then into that same stitch we're going to work a single crochet. And now we're going to basically work a single crochet in every stitch around the whole entire waistband until you get to your beginning single crochet. And once you get there, I'll show you what to do. We're going to actually chain 6 and make the waistband. We're going to actually chain 6 and make a ribbed waistband. And if you want to add elastic in the end, I have a separate video that I'll link so you could do that so that it has an extra nice snug when you wear it. Okay, so I got to the end here and now it's time to start the ribbing for the waistband. And I actually switched over to a 3.75mm hook just to size down a little bit. You don't have to do this, but it will make the ribbing a little bit smaller. And I'm going to begin by chaining 12. You could choose how much you want to chain for how tall you want the ribbing. I want mine to be pretty tall, so I did 12. And now we are going to skip the first chain from the hook and go into that second chain and make a single crochet. And now we're going to continue into every stitch along the row and make one single crochet until you get to the last stitch here. Okay, so I got up to the last stitch here, and the next step is to slip stitch into the next two stitches here. And then the next stitch. Now we're going to turn our work. And make sure the yarn is behind the hook. And now you're going to skip those two slip stitches you just made and go into that first single crochet. And we're going to go into the back loop only for the remainder of the ribbing, and you're going to yarn over and make a single crochet. And you're going to do that in the back loop only until you get to the last one here, and I will show you what to do. Okay, so I just got up to the last stitch here, and we are going to chain one, turn our work, and now we're going to continue working into the back loop of every single crochet, and then you're going to work into the next two stitches by making a slip stitch, turn your work, and then repeat. So you're going to do that around the whole entire waistband until you get to your starting point, and we are going to slip stitch each corresponding stitch on the wrong side of the last row and the first row. So go ahead and make your ribbing all the way around the waistband and come back to the end. You're going to slip stitch into the last two stitches. Okay, and then you're going to keep your hook inserted and then flip the right sides together. And then you're going to go into each corresponding stitch through both loops on each side. So there's the first two. And then the second two on the other side, and then yarn over and slip stitch. And you're just going to do that all the way across till the end, and then cut your yarn and fasten off. Want to make a little drawstring, then take your two yarns and slip knot them together. I'm using a 6mm, but all you're going to do is chain 30 using both of the yarns. Okay, and now you fasten off and just pull tight. And then this is just going to be a false drawstring since I inserted elastic already into the waistband. So it's just for these loose pieces of yarn. And I'm going to count 3 stitches down and then 4 across. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to insert my hook there. And then pull both yarns through. And just pull it so that the tail ends of the yarn are on the wrong side, not the actual chain. And then you are going to continue tying a knot over a knot over a knot so that it gets big enough that it can't go through the waistband. And once you get to that point, you could just weave in all your ends and you should be good.